The world's ever changing. Heck, by the time I'm done this podcast intro, it may have already changed yet again. That's where Agile comes in. My guest, Chris Williams, and I discuss what it means to be a badass Agile. We go over topics such as what Agile is it the next big thing, principles of an Agile organization, how to implement Agile into an organization, and what are the pitfalls, hiccups, and where Agile simply just does not work. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 63, Lead a Badass Agile Organization with Chris Williams. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you here. And if you are new to this podcast, welcome. And if you're not new, and if this is not your first time listening to the show, you just realize something's changed. That's right. I'm applying the principles of Agile and changing up things here at the podcast. New intro, new extra, but you know what? It'll still be the great info that you're here for. So, as my guest, Chris Williams, likes to do in his podcast, Badass Agile, which, you know what? There'll be a link to it in the show notes. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/63 for the show notes. I'm going to remind you why we're here. And we're here for one thing only, and that's to make you a better leader. And I don't care what your situation is, where you're at in life, we all need leadership, right? And the fact that you're listening to this podcast means and tells me that you're ready to make that leap. You're ready to stop being that boss. Because, heck, we all know there are enough freaking bosses out there and not enough leaders. And that's what you're here for. You're here to become a better leader. And I'm here to help you get there. And that's all I'm here for. I'm not here for glory. I'm not here for the cash. I'm here to help you become a better leader, folks. And I do things such as going out and grabbing my world-class guests like Chris Williams and bringing them here and extracting, sucking out their knowledge and giving it to you. That's what it's all about. And today is an awesome show. You're going to hear a great time between myself and Chris. So just a little background on Chris before we dive in. Chris is a consultant, writer, speaker. As I mentioned, he's a podcaster. But what he does and what he truly excels at is that he's a business and personal agility consultant. And with his background, oddly enough, with literature, music, and technology, he's basically found a way to morph all this and shape it so that he brings an amazing product to the table to help you, your organization, your teams become more agile to keep up with the ever-changing world. The place that we're in today. The place that we're in today is not going to be the same place that we'll be in 5 minutes from now. By the end of this podcast, something in this world will have changed. Could be big, could be small, doesn't matter, right? It's changed. And we need to learn as leaders how to be able to not only just react to that change, but get in front of it. Be the reason for the change. Because when you stagnate, when you start hearing those words, well, it's because it's how we always did it, then your organization is starting to crumble. Then you're going to start seeing those pitfalls. Then you're going to start basically dying. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. Especially true in business. And these principles can be applied everywhere. I know in the podcast, you'll hear us talk. It's very business oriented, but these principles can apply to anything. It doesn't matter if you're in a nonprofit. It doesn't matter if you're in politics, government, administrative. It just doesn't matter. The principles are there for you to take, understand, and apply in your specific scenario. And that's what we talk about throughout this podcast today. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Lord knows I did. Be sure to be on the lookout for the key takeaways that I had, all right, throughout my interview with Chris. And that is small but valuable changes. Another one being that Agile just can't be implemented everywhere. It has to be, you have to be decisive about where it goes. And then finally, you have to, as I've preached, God knows how many times, you have to trust your teams. You have to let them do their work. So that's it, folks. That's it for the intro. I hope you enjoyed the new style. Anyway, without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with Chris Williams, talking about how you can lead a badass agile organization. Chris, brother, this has been way overdue.
And that's right.
And it was funny because we just literally talked about how we're going to keep this show clean. I almost dropped the F-bomb right then. And I'm going to keep this in the show anyway because it's been so long overdue.
Yes, it has. Hey, it's good to hear your voice, brother.
Oh, thanks, man. It's good to hear yours too. Welcome finally to Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, bro.
Thank you. This is an honor. This is a huge honor for me.
For the audience are like, what the hell are these two guys getting on? Chris and I have been, I'd say it's going on a freaking year trying to get this thing scheduled.
Yeah, something like that.
And like, this is nuts. Like, absolutely nuts.
Trying to figure it out. I want to say we met on Shaper, didn't we? That LinkedIn app or whatever it's called.
Yeah, they refer to it as the what was it? The LinkedIn meets Tinder app.
That's the one. And I haven't been on that for a long time, so I got to say, have I known you for 2 years?
I think we've connected for about 2 years because ditto. I've gotten rid of that thing for
me too
a long time now as well, and it's a good start.
It was. Well, something. What I'm so grateful for is that I got a chance to meet you.
For sure.
We have had great conversations ever since then, so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I not trying to blow any smoke up your rear end or anything, but you're definitely the best contact that's come out of that app for me.
Oh, thanks, bro. I appreciate that. Likewise.
No, man. So anyway, this is awesome. Let's get down to some serious business here, or try to. I got a feeling we're not actually going to be too serious this whole time. But as you know, you've been listening to the show. The first thing I always like to do with my guests is, get them give a little background about themselves, who they are, how they got to where they're at today, and what they're all about. So why don't you kick off there, and then we'll dive in.
All right, let me see if I can be brief. I don't know if I can do this, but I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario, like really innocuous kind of background, and I wasn't really anything, to anybody. I didn't really play a lot of sports. I played guitar. All I had was my axe, and I spent a lot of my younger life as an only child looking for meaning. And at some point, I had my best friend, Kevin, when I graduated with a useless English degree, he looked at me and he was in the tech space and he's like, dude, if you can write, you should be a technical writer. I said, sounds good. Cause I needed a job at that point. And, so I ended up there and someone very quickly, we're talking mid 90s here. So this is the bubble. And someone said to me, if you can write, you can teach. I said, now that's my language. Cause I love getting up in front of people. And so I ended up being a Microsoft certified trainer, and fast forward almost 2 decades later, and this thing called Agile pops up, which when you're ready for it, I'll kind of give you a backgrounder on what Agile is.
That's next question.
Yeah, totally. Because I know this has got huge applicability for you, but I still was missing something. And I hit a point in my life where I ran into one of your former guests, which is Commander Mark Devine from the U.S. Navy SEALs, and his program called Unbeatable Mind. And I spent 3 years going through the mastery program there. And so that was a life changer. Like everything that wasn't working for me, I turned around and channeled all that energy into building not only the podcast, but a coaching business and all that stuff that's just so fueled by passion for teaching people. And much like you, like what I love about your podcast is you start off the show and you say like, we're here for one thing and one thing only. And that just makes the hair on my neck stand up every time. So that's the experience that I'm looking to give to people as well. So that's how I ended up being a podcaster and an agile coach.
That is awesome. I love it. And just shout out to the Mark Devine episode. I'm throwing that in the show notes, folks. If you just head to movingforwardleadership.com/6363, the Mark Devine episode is definitely going to be in there because it is by far one of the best. Actually, it's the most downloaded episode I got going.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. I mean, like that guy is just so, everything that I learned that mattered because I wanted to learn from the best, right? My dad was U.S. Navy. Now he's long since passed, but I didn't really have an upbringing where I was really pushed.
Right.
And so that environment taught me to push the edges and really see what I was capable of. When you join the Unbeatable Mind program, one of the first things he challenged you with is like, be prepared to meet yourself for the first time, because you're capable of 10 to 20 times what you think you're capable of. And that just blew my mind.
Oh yeah, 100%. That whole episode was basically, I just sat there and I was just like,
Yeah.
it was just that good.
Yep.
And as well, I don't know, have you read his book?
Oh God, yeah. I've got 10 signed copies upstairs.
Oh,
just
nice.
saving it for when I meet. You know how it is, brother. When you meet somebody who
Right.
you know is feeling the pain, and they're reaching out to you and they want your help and they want your coaching. You know that the best gift that you can give is something from your past that turned it around for you. So I've got signed copies of that book waiting, for those kinds of people who enter my life, who they're looking to make a change.
Yeah.
So
100%.
have I read his book? Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, The Way of the Seal. Again, I'll throw that one in the show notes too. Huge read. Actually, a listener bought that book for me.
Really?
Yeah.
That was nice of him.
Yeah, super nice. Because I'd thrown up basically an early episode, just basically the video recording of what we're doing right now between Mark and I. I said this is too good that I threw it up in the mastermind, and one of the members of the mastermind actually bought me a copy of the book.
Nice.
Yeah, so
all right, well, I can up that only by getting you a signed copy.
Amazing. All right. Tangent. I think this is going to be a great episode for tangents and stuff, but it's all good, right? So, you talked about your upbringing and you got into this Agile. What the heck is Agile? Like, when I think Agile, I think hockey and squash, because those are my two main sports, and the ability to quickly change, my movement or my position in relation to the puck or the ball.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to speak now to all the brothers and sisters who are out there in corporate, Canada, corporate North America. If you work for big corporations, which, let's face it, the heart and soul of where people find jobs today are in big organizations, I'm willing to bet that you struggle with that feeling of, if only we could get things done sooner. Isn't there a way that we could be more reactive, that we could take something from idea all the way to production in a much faster way? So in my world, where I came from, if you recall, it was really the tech world. So you're looking at software development. If you can think back to 1995, there was a product called Windows 95, and then there was a product called Windows 98, and then there was a Windows 2000, which basically tells you that they used to release stuff every 2 to 3 years. Big releases. Fast forward to today, you're probably looking at your smartphone and all your favorite apps are updated every week, every 2 weeks. But they're not massive changes like Windows 3.1 to Windows 95, and I'm dating myself in a big way.
I know it all.
It was a massive change. It was like, where's everything moved? Change color, different place. Now, Instagram, Facebook, those things, they don't change that much, right? There's small little adjustments or adaptations, what they call incremental changes, but nothing really is like overhauled overnight. So it turns out that the people who do software delivery for a living, a bunch of them got together and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. Because the old way was to plan it for 6 months, then analyze it for 6 months. Now, you're military, so some of this is going to start ringing bells as I know it. And then maybe if it gets approved, right, if we get enough brass signatures, we execute for a year and then we test for 6 months and then we deploy something. And by the time we deploy it, there's a chance we could be too late. And you and I both know, in military terms, that landscape has changed completely. You can't plan stuff for a year. You have to be ready to turn on a dime. And so sports analogies, because the one thing I did do after joining Unbeatable Mind was become a boxer and then became a boxing instructor. So I learned a lot about that sports background I never had when I was a kid. And as you know, your adaptability and your ability to maneuver in rapidly shifting landscapes is everything. So Agile is basically saying, let's not plan for a year. Let's plan for a couple of days and deliver something small but valuable in a couple of weeks. And then let's improve it and add to it and add to it and add to it. And the way that you do this, so Agile itself doesn't tell you how to do that. There's methods called Scrum or Kanban or Lean you might have heard of. They tell you how to go about it. But Agile really refers to the philosophy of saying, We're not helping our customers by making them wait a year and a half for a new product. If something happens in the marketplace, we need to be able to respond today. And businesses need to be able to do that to stay competitive. Let's face it, it's 2019, right? We can't have products that a customer has to wait 2 years to enjoy. So that's Agile in a nutshell. If that helps, does that kind of make sense?
Makes absolute sense to me. And
Okay.
I just threw it out. I knew what Agile was before we even got on the conversation. It was definitely for the for the group out there. But I just love the whole ideology of let's break down all the barriers, and move as fast as possible, right? Because stuff may change within seconds. You can go into a meeting and you can come out and the world's changed. And if you're not prepared to be able to react quick and execute on that, you're going to die as an organization. Sorry.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And you're just going to fall behind the competitors and you're just going to give up. And I like to use this one example of more in a leadership context, but it's still the principles of Agile of delegation. And like I was talking to a coaching call on one of the guys, and he went into an all-day meeting. He came out and he had lost lost a tender for offer for a contract because he didn't delegate enough power to his subordinates.
Right.
And the situation changed. They needed an update that day, and he wasn't available.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but it's kind of everywhere if you think about it. Like back in the old day, this podcast that you and I are doing would have been a radio show. And they would have planned and recorded a year's worth of radio shows or a season's worth all in advance. What happens if something changes? Let's say something pops up in the news. Let's say a 9/11 happens. You can't change your content and adapt. You basically have to play what you made. Now, folks like you and I can put in an episode the next day.
Oh, 100%.
Right? But that's what audiences are commanding. That's what they want. That's what they need.
Yeah, I in real life example for myself, I recorded an episode with great episode with Thor Conklin, and if you go listen to that episode, you'll hear me talk about how this was a second recording. So what actually happened in the back scenes was I recorded it, and when I do my recordings, I do all the prep work and all that, and I kind of when they're far out in advance. In that time, I was recording like 6 weeks in advance, so I stuffed all Thor stuff in this folder. Got to it when I got to my editing time, and then when I put it all together, I was like, "Oh my god!" The sound came out. I was like, "This doesn't do myself nor in regards actually doesn't do Thor justice of how good the content was. The sound quality for whatever reason just came out horrible." Yeah, so I canned it and then grabbed another one and popped it right back in. You can do that,
right? Yes, I know.
Right?
Isn't that great? Yeah.
So, is Agile the next great thing? Is that is the next big thing in the whole organization world?
If you're just jumping on it, I feel so the software people have known about it for a while. We're now entering a domain where business agility is becoming the hot topic. So how can we take the concept I just explained to you, which is like, let's fail forward fast. Let's do small experiments. Let us plan for a short cycle, execute a short cycle, and learn from our failures and learn from what we build. Let's put it in customers' hands so they can feed back on it. All of a sudden, people in like legal, in tax, in marketing especially. So Agile for marketing is huge right now, but it's spreading across all kinds of business. So I think what's happening is people are seeing it as a more relevant model for the century that we're in. And what you're seeing is people learning from Agile and applying those management practices at the team level in the everyday. And that includes things like, Agile has principles about no hierarchy. So let's make decisions in the room. If you're doing things in 2-week cycles, the worst you can do is make a screw up that costs the company 2 weeks worth of work. Right? So we no longer take questions or challenges and send them all the way up the leadership chain to wait a month for them to come all the way back down the leadership chain. We let teams in the room make a call. Right? Totally revolutionary concept. Where else does that happen? But if you think about it in military, I'm guessing they're probably decentralizing command as well to a certain extent, in that you start with commander's intent. But at a certain point, if you need an effective team that can scramble quickly and adjust, they got to be able to make a call and trust each other. So that's the way Agile is structured as well.
You're preaching to the choir. Preaching to the
Amen,
choir.
right? Yeah. Some hallelujah going on.
I love it.
Yep.
You know, it just breeds delegation to me. Absolutely just
Yes.
breeds it. And I've been preaching delegation from day one of this podcast. And it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, your latest episode, I'm dating myself a couple of weeks here, I'm sure, but the episode just prior to this one was all about the force multipliers in leadership.
Yeah.
And one of your concepts was delegation, right? Trust
100%.
your teams. If you can't trust your teams, you are the problem.
100%. You know, that commander's intent, that's the crucial thing. What it is you want to achieve. Let them go do it. You worry about the strategic level problems. Let them worry about the tactical level game, right?
Exactly.
And actually during the latest conflicts, you know, Afghanistan for Canadians and in Iraq, Afghanistan and Iraq for the U.S., the ideology of a strategic corporal came out. And basically that is allowing the troops on the ground to make the calls right away, vice having to go back up, because the impacts could have strategic level impacts. And
totally.
And there's a great example. I won't go down the road, but U.S. corporal out there, you know, he, long story short, showed some respect to a funeral procession, and then the intelligence noticed a drop in incidents in that area of Iraq. So,
wow.
Boom.
Wow.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's quick thinking on your feet. That's delegation. And leading to the overall impact and what the whole game is all about. So
totally. So, and here's the bottom line. If your competitor / enemy is doing this stuff, guess what? If you ain't doing it, I always say when I get teams in rooms, and I stole this one from military as well, because there was a story about, you know, somewhere out there in Iraq, there's a guy in a cave who is planning to kill you, and he doesn't sleep and he doesn't eat, and he is absolutely not going to stop until the job is done. And I say the same things to teams in team rooms when I'm training them. I say, look out the window. Because right now, one of my big clients is one of the big consulting firms. So you can literally look at the four corners, and all your competitors are staring at you on a 45-degree angle. I said, look at them. They're looking in the window, and they're just thinking about the day when you got to take your sign down because you couldn't compete. And they'll take your fancy chairs, and they'll take your whiteboards, and they'll take everything, man. And they'll do it with no mercy. So if you're not doing this, if you're not competitive, you're going to die.
Thrive or die. That's the way. That's unfortunately that's just the way the whole world works. If you're in some kind of organization, and it doesn't matter if you're in for profit or not for profit. If you can't show in the not for profit side your reason that and how you're helping whatever your mission is and goal is, well, you're not going to get those sponsorships. You're not going to get that inflow of cash, and all suddenly things are just going to suck up and dry. And, you know, you can apply that to the political realm. You can apply that to government, whatever. Doesn't matter where you are, right?
Go to your local shopping mall. How many of your favorite brands, places that you've been shopping for 20 years, 30 years, are gone or going because they can't compete?
Sears? Hello.
Yeah.
Right. So there's got to be some kind of principles of implementation for, you know, making your organization an agile one. Yeah.
So here's where I'm specializing right now, because I help companies what we call transform, which again is a huge buzzword, but I'm interested in two key areas. But before I do that, let me answer your question first. So to transform or become more agile, beware the trap of buying a huge framework, basically a blueprint or a map for transforming your organization to agility. Because agility by its definition is a spirit and a way of working that we should adopt. Truth be told, you can't build or buy a car agile. I can't ship you a pair of wheels and then an axle and then 2 weeks later a steering column and a steering wheel. That's no fun for the customer. So there's no way to do certain things with agility, which means there will always be certain processes that have to be done stepwise, what we call waterfall. And at the very end of it, we flip the light switch on and ta-da, it's ready to go. What most big organizations struggle with is they hear the word agile and they think, oh, so better, faster, cheaper, right? That's the wrong reason to do anything. Now, you and I know on my podcast, I talk about vision is one thing, service is different. If you serve. So if Scott McCarthy gives away 200 episodes of his best stuff for free, and he gives away his book for free, and he gives away his Facebook mastermind group for free, you'd be like, what's this guy doing? His stuff is like not valuable or what? No. You give away your best stuff for free because you want to find the willing minds, right? This is what you got to do to compete. You want to find the projects that fit, and you want to find willing minds. So if your reason is no good, if your reason for putting out all this content, Scott, is so that Scott can profit, you're going to fail, right? The universe is going to find you out. Karma is going to find you out. But by putting your best work out there, you are going to attract people who have gratitude and who have a need for your leadership and your philosophy. And eventually the right people will pay you to do that so you can have a living that you deserve. Am I right? Like, is that not the business model that all of us podcasters kind of know and love?
Nail on the head. Nailed on the head.
Okay. So if your reason is bad, I always say this, that your reason for doing everything matters more than anything. So if an organization wants to be successful with Agile adoption, you can't want Agile because you think it will save you money. It might down the road, but it will probably only save you money in certain areas. What it will do is allow you to delight your customers more reliably because you'll be giving them things that they value on a schedule that makes sense to them. Like, how often as businesses do we forget who our customer is and what they value? Customers in 2019 want their stuff and they want it now. So let's give it to them. And the minute you think, oh, this is just going to make things cheaper and faster, you're going to ruin it. Because you're not really interested in the happiness of your teams. You're not interested in the team autonomy we just talked about. You're not interested in delighting your customer. You're interested in improving the bottom line. So step number one, if your reason for implementing Agile is pure profit or savings, not going to work. And halt. Full stop. Number two, don't try to transform the whole organization. So you get on this Agile thing and it sounds great. And even if you train yourself off of the dollar signs in the eyeball, cash register sound in the ear type thing, let's say you're doing Agile for all the right reasons. If you try to press it on the whole organization, you're probably going to fail. Reason being, as I said before, you can't deliver a car Agile, right? Your wife can't deliver that baby in 9 1-month increments. We all get that. And the third thing, this is the focus of my podcast for 2019. I'm fascinated with the psychology of change, right? So we bring in this new technique that allows us to delight our customers, but it also means the old processes for getting things approved and rubber stamped and funded. The old processes for, analyzing and make sure that whatever we build doesn't fail. We're so scared of failure. One of my first principles when I hit a new organization is say, you got to embrace failure. And the first thing that people ask me is, this is a great presentation. Can you take the word failure out though? It happens every single time. And I'm like, well, where would Google be if they didn't love the word failure? Where would Tesla be if they didn't love the word failure? Where would Uber or Lyft or those companies be if they didn't love the word failure? So you got to be prepared for the resistance. And this is where what I learned in boxing and what I learned from, Unbeatable Mind is probably the most valuable lesson I ever got. I've never taken a course in Agile. What I needed to take a course in is how to wrestle the resistance.
It's so funny how scared people are of failure. They run away from it like Mach 10 when they should be running towards it at Mach 50.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Because we're not talking about mission failure, are we? If we're
Absolutely
talking about
not.
Mission failure, everybody dies. Human lives are on the line. That's no good. But small experiments in training or small experiments in controlled environments, that is how you learn. And it is okay to fail. Like, talk to Mark Devine. The training that they put those guys through is designed to break you down to nothing so they can build you back up again. Because it's only then that you learn what you're truly capable of.
100%. And you don't know what you don't know until you hit that point. And you don't know where your weak spots are. If you just embrace your strengths, you don't know where you're weak. And then all of a sudden your competitor is doing a flanking, hitting you where you're weak, and you're done.
Exactly. Not to mention the fact that the thinking that got you to where you are now is not going to
get you there
in the future. So where do we teach people to leap? Right?
Right.
So, I know your leadership model, like we talked the other episode you had about power goals instead of smart goals. What I love about that is that it's inherently agile because it starts with the long view of having a goal, like plan for something, and then rapidly execute in small chunks, and then stop and examine and improve and repeat. It's a cycle.
Yep, absolutely.
As it should be, right? As it should be.
Yeah, for sure. Because you if you deviate from the course by 5 centimeters or whatever, it's easier to redirect yourself back on the path sooner than waiting that quarter. Let's review a quarter down the road. All of a sudden, you're not 5 centimeters off the course; you're about 5 miles off the course.
Exactly. I always say a plane leaving the tarmac in, let's call it the east coast of Canada, if they're half a degree off course, by the time they land, they'll be 500 or 600 miles off course. So now you've got customers who are like, wait, we're not near our destination. We got to stop and refuel. This is an extra how many hours? Like, customers are not going to be happy. If you make small adjustments along the way, though, you end up where you intended to be.
100%. Of course, the pilot is going to be adjusting for the wind, changes in wind as it goes over the Atlantic from St. John's towards Halifax, right? It's the way it goes. I've done that flight too many times. I know. So, leaders are up there. They're definitely listening to this, and they're nodding their heads, because I know they are. Yeah. And they're like, yes, I see how this can work for us. I know. The question is, how do I implement it?
Okay. So from an implementation perspective, here was my trick. Start an interesting fire and let other people come and get warm to it. I don't know if you remember back in, let's call it 2008, there was a huge power outage all across the Eastern Seaboard, right? So that night, I'm at home and there is no light anywhere. And I'm living in Toronto, obviously. It's creepy how dark it is. And all of a sudden, out of the darkness, I hear some people playing some acoustic guitar and singing, right? What else can you do when there's no power? There's no DVDs, there's no CDs, there's no nothing. So I hear these people and I'm like, I don't know what's going on over there, but I definitely want some. Like, I'm digging the energy. And we all kind of went over there and they had candles lit. And it was just a rare kind of interesting experience. And we were drawn to it just because of the power and the sound that they were making in the complete darkness. So I think that if you want to implement Agile in your organization, find an experiment where you've got the willing minds, right? So save yourself the trouble of trying to convert leaders who are not into it, who are not on board yet. Find people who are willing. You know who they are, right? You know who in your organization has got that mindset. You know who in your organization is willing to take risks, who gets it, who understands customer value, who understands team happiness. So you bring those people together and let them run your first Agile experiment. Maybe there's a software app you're thinking of building. Maybe it's your website. But for me, dude, it was the podcast itself. I'm like, I have no idea what I really should write and podcast about. So I tried something. I felt like there were too many podcasts on how to do Agile. I wanted to talk about what's an Agile leader got to be made of. So I released episode 1 and episode 2. And at first, nobody was listening, and maybe a bunch of people were laughing, and I'll never know. All I know is I didn't quit. I kept after it. I made those small adjustments, but I stayed true to my vision, and over time, the experiment paid off. So you got to do the same thing. You got to find some place where you want to start with agility and light that interesting fire. When you hit home runs, people will notice. And when they notice, they're going to be like, we want some too. Probably the most powerful 4 words in the English language. And when they want some too, they're going to ask you, what did you have to do? How did you have to shift? What policies and procedures did you have to implement in order to get those home runs? And they will do it. If I told you I knew a way you can make $1 million in a week, you would ask me, how do I do it? And then you would follow the steps, hopefully.
I would think so.
The philosophy is exactly the same, that you model success of others whose success you admire. So if you can find just one project in which to make an impact, other people are going to start paying attention. They're going to start asking questions, and they're going to start seeing how this could impact their side of the business, and the right people will come to you. I know you know this about visionary leaders. Not everyone will like you, but the people who do like you love you. Yeah. And you can change their lives in a heartbeat. Everyone else, the haters and the resistors and all those people, they may never come to you, but you can't set that as your goal.
You cannot make everybody happy, and you can't make everybody love you.
You get it. Yep, you get it.
But even with those things in mind, they will still follow you if you do the right things, right?
100%. Yep.
So, no, wow, some definite serious knowledge bombs being dropped here today, folks. Love it, Chris. Why did we wait so long to get you on the show? I knew
everything happens for a reason, man.
Hey, man.
Like we both had to get to where we are today in order to make this impactful.
Well, you know what? What a great way to kick off the interviews for, we'll call it Moving Forward Leadership 2.0, right?
100%. I love it.
I love it as well. So I guess probably the one last thing I'd like to know is, what should people be aware of? Where are the hiccups? Where are the pitfalls? Where does, probably even, I think you've kind of breezed over this a little bit, but where does Agile not work? All those, so the negative aspects, right? Because everything has a good side and everything's got a bad side. So we gotta be aware of the both.
So I'm going to tell you, and it's like this with everything. Isn't it funny? I heard a quote the other day. I read something called the Daily Stoic. Every single day I open it up, and Stoic philosophy is highly aligned to, soldier mindset, that kind of thing. So you would love this book if you haven't read it, but check out the Daily Stoic. And one of the things I got in my inbox was, if it's not simple, it's BS. I'll let that sink in for a second. How many times do we overcomplicate things because we have this drive, this compulsion to be certain, this compulsion to be safe? What does that cost us? How many times do we not do the thing we ought to do because we're not sure it's going to work out? How many times do we not leap because we're afraid of what it means if it doesn't work out? So as I said before, let's keep this real simple. In order for Agile to work well, what are the pitfalls? The hiccups was your question. It's not going to surprise you. It is fear. Number one cause of Agile failure, and don't take my word for it, go and Google this, go search on the internet, you'll find out the number one cause of Agile failure is lack of leadership support, A, and fear of change, B. Like simply not willing to shift mindset to the new way of doing. So if you want to do Agile, this is why I said go find the people who have the right mind alignment. Because if they're not trusting the teams, they are 100% of the problem. If you have an Agile initiative and it fails, it's because you wanted it for the wrong reason and you were not willing to do the things that were required in order to do it successfully. So Mark Devine always likes to quote the smoke jumper creed. Do today what others won't so you can have tomorrow what others can't. And that's in the book, right? That's in Way of the Seal.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you have to find the people, right? You have to find the people who are willing to make the shift, which means trusting teams, which means being okay sinking X dollars into an experiment that may not end up in shippable product just so we can learn a lesson. Until you find those people, you will always struggle with agility. So you got to have the right mindset, and you have to find a way to get around the fear of failure and fear of change.
If I could probably summarize you, it's basically if someone has the mindset, well, it's because we've always done it this way, get rid of them. Don't let them in.
They got to go, dude. They got to go. They're not serving the organization. They are not serving you. History is interesting, but it doesn't make for good competition.
Oh, well, I got, you're talking to a guy with a history degree. So
yeah.
Absolutely will agree with that.
But again, it's you have to understand history in order to reflect properly upon the future, the present and the future. If you ran your campaign the same way they ran a Civil War campaign, you'd fail.
100%.
It's just combat is different. Everything has changed. So you learn from those strategies to inform and equip yourself, but you don't repeat them. You don't keep doing them because it's the way we've always done them. Tradition buys you nothing.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And I come from a organization where traditions and customs are, highly regarded and
100%.
kept, but we keep it for good reasons and not necessarily bad ones. Chris, man, I've loved this conversation. It's been way too overdue, as I said before. It's been awesome. We're going to wind it down here, but the the last question that I always ask everybody. Now it's your turn to answer it.
All right.
And that is the Chris Williams. What makes a great leader?
You know, a leader has to have a vision for a better world. I think a leader has to be prepared to live a life of distinction. When I think a leader, I think about people who were entirely selfless. I think Martin Luther King. I think Nelson Mandela. I think people like that. People who are willing to sacrifice it all to support a dream. I think you have to be prepared to stand in harm's way between your team and wherever danger may be. That's the job. A leader is simply someone who goes first. I think, let's keep it simple, right? The leader's got to be the person who's willing to put that first foot forward, to inspire others, to mentor others, to serve as a living example of how to live with nobility, how to live with purpose, and how to live with distinction. How's that?
Oh, out of the park. And then some. Probably into the next part. Good. Boom.
I love it.
Awesome, man. All right, it's your turn. It's your turn. You had the mic this whole time, but I'm gonna flip it over and feel free to give yourself the shameless plug. How can people reach out to you? The podcast, the websites, where can they find Badass Agile?
Right on. So it's badassagile.com. That's one word, badassagile.com. And you can get to the podcast right from there. You can also sign up. I have a book. I mentioned the Daily Stoic. So I kind of have a daily Agilist book that I'm writing, and I'm writing it Agile style, 1 page a day. Every day I publish. So there's a new inspiration that just keeps you on the Agile path, that keeps you thinking the right mindsets, little reflections to, keep you on the straight and narrow. And I'm working on a leadership book called Command, which is all about, once again, the simple leadership concepts that I learned from the Mark Divines of the world that I know work to inspire people towards that life of distinction that I was talking about. And one last thing, anybody who is a member of either the Canadian Armed Forces, the United States military, if you ever need help, like let's say you're transitioning to civilian life, you don't know where to go, you're looking for maybe an opportunity in the leadership or the technology world or the innovation world, and you think Agile might be a fit for you, you don't pay. You come and talk to me, and whatever I can do to serve for those who have served their country, that's on the house. Always will be. So please extend that offer to your listeners. Anybody needs some advice or just a little coaching or whatever could change their lives, I'm ready to do it.
Awesome. I will definitely throw that out on my various social media networks and highlight that fact. Chris, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. It's been, it's honestly just great knowing you and the conversations we've had up to date, yes, and even, the ones we'll have in the future. Just been outstanding.
Well, all I got to say is you're up next.
Love it. Can't wait for it, man. Can't wait for it.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, audience, stick around. And as always, like Chris mentioned, all the resources and stuff, just go to the show notes, movingforwardleadership.com/63, and it's all going to be in there for you. Chris, again, man, thanks for coming out, and take care, brother. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, always, if you enjoyed the podcast episode or the show in its entirety, don't forget R² and S². Rate and review so others can find the podcast and I can help more people out there with their leadership journey. S, share. Share this episode with someone who you think could use the lessons that were learned today in their daily life. And finally, subscribe. Subscribe so you don't miss another episode ever again. You can do that simply by going movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. Thank you. Thank you for your continued support. And remember, as always, keep pushing, keep trying, keep moving forward. Take care now.